G'day fellas. Today I'm going to be talking to you about graphics settings and other settings in general that you're going to need to change from the default settings. So I'm going to be going over all the settings with the exception of hotkeys. They're going to be touched on in a later video. So today what we're going to be looking at is what are the best settings that enable you to have the best experience in a competitive environment. So that's not taking into account how you think the game should look or the feel of the game, or if you like to see big shadows on the ground or something like that. It's not taking any of that into account. It's purely just based on what's going to give you the best competitive edge, because there can be quite a big difference when you've got some of the quality settings turned on high to low. And so what we're going to do is we're going to jump into a game and we're going to take a look at not what each of these settings do. We're going to have a look at the most important ones that you need to make sure that you've got on. So we'll start by jumping into a skirmish. So the map that I'm going to be choosing is Florida, and there's a very specific reason why, and that is because it enables me to demonstrate the most important setting to you. So you'll start off in Florida and you'll see, so we've got everything on high at the moment, and it's absolutely beautiful. So one of the most amazing things about Florida is just this foliage. It looks absolutely gorgeous, and as your units walk through the grass, they actually leave a trail. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but there's a trail there, and it slowly gets covered up as the time continues moving on. But the problem is that it can obscure your hunts. So there's our turkey that's dead. It's quite difficult to see the turkey, especially when you combine it with, say, the shadow of a town center. Well, that's not a turkey. All right, that might be a rock. It looks like a turkey. Let's see if we can get these in a little bit closer. So we'll go here. Look at that. So take a look at the difference between the turkeys that are killed in the grass versus the turkeys that aren't killed in the grass. So you've got a turkey back here, which is that's a turkey. You can gather from that. And then you've got one of these turkeys up the front here. Compare them to the alive turkeys. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the foliage settings. So we're going to turn them to low. Take a look how clear that is. There's no messing around with that. There's no gimmick. There's absolutely nothing that you could mistake about this. These are the turkey bodies. When you combine this with, say, the flag here moving back and forth, it can be very difficult to distinguish from the town center's shadow. And so just generally, it's a good idea to have the foliage settings turned down to minimum. Sometimes I do play with them on when I am recording a video and I want it to look nice. But in this instance, I would encourage everybody just to have them turned on to a minimum, just because of the way that they can obscure units. So the next thing that we're going to be covering is the obscured unit alpha down here. So as a unit walks behind a town center or any building, it's obscured. So how do you know if it's there? You know if it's there from unit obscured alpha, or obscured unit alpha. So we're going to stick it onto 100. We're going to see what that looks like. You see how bright that stands out? The reason why is right there. So when that hunt dies, it remains there like that. I know that it's there, even though I can't see it. It stays there because of obscured unit alpha. So it's important that this is a setting that you remain keeping on. And people might say, oh, it's not that important because once my villagers are finished here, they're going to naturally move over to here and they'll shoot the turkey in and they'll move there by themselves. But when you're going to be playing at a higher level, you're aiming to be as competitive as you can. It's important that you're able to see this turkey because you're going to have your town center gather point going to it. When this gets low, you're going to be moving settlers off and trickling them over to the next turkey. And it's important you don't forget that it's there. So the next setting that we're going to be looking at, so it's dynamic lights, clouds, bloom effect, and SSAO. Now, these effects don't really change the game drastically, but it's important that you keep at least bloom effect, SSAO, and clouds turned off. And the reason why is just because they can obscure the game. So even though they can be nice to look at, they distract you from what you're meant to be looking at on your screen. And often you can find yourself on certain maps attempting to maneuver around them. And that's not something that you should ever want to be doing. It works beautifully in the campaign, but when you're bringing it into a competitive 1v1, especially where you need to be at the highest level of focus, it's important that you've got that turned off. So the next thing is anti-aliasing. Now this is a big thing. So this has only been a recent addition in the most recent patch that's come out a couple of days ago. So fortunately, we're now able to turn anti-aliasing off. And what this does is it really outlines the units a lot better. It allows you to see them. So I'm actually able to tell, even though I'm running a 3440 by 1440p monitor, it's a 34-inch monitor. These units look pretty small to me, but I'm able to tell when anti-aliasing is on and when it's off because of the way that the units render. The units have a fuzzier outline. It melds all of the colors into each other, and the computer seems to think that it's a clearer look because it puts all the colors and crosses them all over. But in reality, what it does is it makes your units blurry. And so what you're going to do is just turn that off. So not FXAA. You're just going to turn it off completely. And it's going to give your units a clearer outline, a clearer render. And it's a really, really important setting to change. And it just enables you to have much more clarity when you're on the battlefield microing. So overall, when it comes to the quality settings, to the post-processing and to the details, it's really just up to you how you want to do it. For me, this is my favorite settings right here. I go with high on everything, and then I just go low for the foliage. You can go medium for the foliage. It's not as bad as it is, but it does still distract you. You've got a lot of things on your screen, a lot more shadows generated, and you're not quite sure. So this plant over here, is that a turkey? That is a turkey, but it could be part of the plant. Now, if I remember correctly, I think that plant is actually there in low foliage. Let's have a look. It's not. All right, so you lose those plants. So they're little distractors, and it might not seem like a lot, but if you know, let's say, and I've done this before. Let's say you think that that's your turkey, or you don't think that's a turkey, and you leave it, but you depict this shadow here, or this shadow here, or this shadow here as a turkey, and you send your villagers over there, and you leave them, and they just stay there. And then you've got to pick them up as an idol later. You've got to come back to them, pick them up. And so it's just something that you really want to keep off. All right, so moving on to the game options. Now, there's a lot of good stuff in here. The very first thing that you're going to do is you're going to turn this setting off right here. Enable right-click camera drag. And the reason why you're going to turn this off is because, all right, I'll show you what's going to happen. When you turn on this setting, right-click camera drag, it allows you to drag your camera. Now, this is really great for spectating a game, but when you're playing a game, it's not as helpful. Ideally, the best way to be moving is just going to be sharp little movements like that towards the edge of your screen. Other than that, you can also snap units, so using the controls. So I've got Control 1 and I've got Control 5, and by pressing a key at the same time, so I'm going to go 1, 1, it's going to snap over to my villagers here. I'm going to press 5, 5 now. It's going to snap to my explorer. So that's another way that you can get around the map. You can also put your town center in there. So you've got 1, 1, 5, 5, and 4, 4. So that's the best way to get around the map. If you're getting around the map like this, it's just, it's an ineffective way and a poor use of your time. Now, the second reason why this is particularly bad is because when you're right clicking, you might not always do a perfect right click. What you might do is you might do that right there. You might do a command and then slightly move it. If you've ever seen your army walk into the enemy army and you think to yourself, I attack moved. I specifically issued the attack move command. Why are they walking there? It's because the command never went through. Because you've most likely hit the right click button and just held it a little bit too long. Perhaps you were hesitating, or it's just it could be something to do with your mouse. And the command just doesn't go through. As you can see, my commands aren't going through. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this setting off, and that's going to enable us to take as long as we like, and it just immediately, the moment I touch down on my right click button, they're just instantly there. I don't have the option to drag it. It's just the command gets issued. So this is going to limit a lot of mistakes that people will make. Often, I found myself doing this until I read a forum post that said, this is what you need to do. You need to turn this setting off straight away. And so yeah, I'm really glad that I can be here and delivering this. So the next setting that we're going to be talking about is the camera zoom. So when it comes to camera zoom, it's important that you retain a very far zoom out. So for me, I've got quite a big monitor, and it enables me to see a huge amount of the battlefield. But if I turn this down, so let's go to game options. So let's say I put it down to normal. It's going to significantly reduce the amount, actually. Is it working at the moment? It might not. Oh, I think you might need to actually restart the game. Let's give that a try. Kind of looks the same to me. Alright, so I did end up restarting the game and keeping the setting as near, and I wasn't able to notice any difference whatsoever. So I think at the moment this setting might be bugged, but in the future, for when it does actually get fixed, it's important that you do keep it as very far, just because when you're near, so it looks something like this, you're only going to be seeing this much of the battlefield. And so it's important that you're able to see everything. That means you're able to see cavalry raids. That means you're able to see idle villages. That means you're just able to see a lot more. Now, on some maps, I will say, so if you go and play the map, I think it's Rockies, because of the way that the Rockies map works, what it does is it makes your camera even further zoomed out. Rockies, where are you here? Actually, no, there's a new one. Colorado is probably the best one. So with Colorado, because you start... essentially on the lower level and there's a higher level, it makes your camera incredibly zoomed out. So you can see right here, the camera is really zoomed out. The TC is very small, and the reason why is if we have a look at X marks the spot, it's because of this higher level over here. So this higher level is where the game should be, but they're taking us down a level to let us play. So when you're playing on Colorado, don't be afraid to just zoom in a little bit. It's something that I do quite often. But for the most part, you're going to want to be playing out, and always going to want to be playing with the very fast setting, even once they do fix it. So the next setting that you're going to be changing is the camera acceleration. So you want your camera acceleration to be as short as possible. This is going to enable you to be moving your screen very quickly, because the acceleration is just straight instantly. So if you've got this turned up to 100, what happens is you get this very long delay. Can you see that little delay right there? It's got to work its way up, and that's just you just want to be moving it and having it go over. So it's important that you've got that down at a minimum right there. The next thing is scroll speed. Now, you don't want this really high. If you've got your scroll speed set to 100, you're going to go across the entire map before you know it. So, just make sure that it's down at a reasonable number. And by the same token, if it's down at 0, then what's going to happen is you're barely going to move your screen at all. And you need to be making sure that you move it a reasonable amount. So it's important to go somewhere in the middle. I found that 40 is normally the best option. Another setting that I encourage people to keep on is the easy drag military option. So what this does is it means that when you drag a box like this, it's not going to drag your settlers with it. So let's say that you're in the middle of a fight or someone's pushing into your base. You've got your settlers, they're on the trees, and you've got your units right here. If you want to get your settlers in from the trees, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. You might have to do a box here, and you might have to do a shift box here, and then move them in together like that. But what it means is that if you've got your units all fighting and the enemy... Oh gosh, I haven't turned that back on, have I? That was not fun.
2 hours later.
Okay. It's probably bugged. Alright, let's not worry about that now. We can always come back to that. So let's say you've got your enemy pushing in and you want to select all your units. You can just grab a nice big box like that and you can push all your units out. That way you don't have to worry about getting rid of settlers, because if you've got all your settlers like that and you're commanding them, your settlers are going to come to the front line. And that's not what you want to be doing. You want your settlers nice and safe. They need to be in the back line. And so by enabling that setting, it means that when you do a nice big box and you grab everybody, it's not going to be hitting them. Alright, now moving on to, I think that's absolutely everything in the game options that we need to cover, or at least everything that's important. All of these are just really come down to preference. Oh, we should probably talk about clamp mouse to window here. This is an important setting if you're playing in windowed mode. So let's say you've got a large screen and you're just playing it on a portion of it with the window. You want to be clamping your mouse to window. This is going to mean that when you're going to the edge of the screen and you're doing that camera movement like that, your mouse isn't going to fly off into Google Chrome. It's not going to fly off into your Citrix session because you're meant to be working. It's just going to be staying within the game. So that's the final setting that you want to make sure is turned on if you're playing in windowed mode. The next one is UI. So UI, you want to pretty much have absolutely everything turned on here. Unit training queue, it's an imperative. You need to be able to see what units are being trained. So it's going to show you in the bottom right hand corner your unit that's being produced. So ideally what you're going to be doing is you're going to be making sure that your unit, we'll just delete these instead. Your unit, when it gets really, really close to being finished, all you're going to do is pop that in. You're just going to go pop, like that. And it's going to give you 5. The idea when you're training military units is you just simply want to have one training. And that enables you to do other things. So you can have villagers queued. That means you can be building your house in the meantime and not have any issues. This is the optimal way to play, is by doing this. Now, it is possible that you can just punch in a whole bunch. But keep in mind that when you've got all these units in here, these are all resources that aren't being used. So by doing that, you're stacking up a whole bunch of resources in advance when you could be using them. So hypothetically, I'm going to have an income trickling in, and then I'm going to be able to queue up units as I go. And then hopefully, once I get to the time where it's about to pop out, I can do that. And by having that show on my UI down here, it's very, very easy for me to keep track of that. And often I will find myself picking that up. I'll be looking down in that corner. I'll be checking my minimap. I'll see that something's very close. And then I'll, right there, get those last couple of units in. So that's why that's an incredibly important UI option. The second thing, show advanced resources, show player score, advanced formation, advanced tech. I'm not quite sure what that actually does. So it's information, additional information and stats for improvements. So it sounds great. Show hit points, hotkeys. So invert, control and shift. This is really comes down to a preference. For me, I like it the way that it was. Hotkey snap to units, so that's something that we spoke about earlier. You can take that off. So moving back up, we're going to talk about show game time. Now, you've got two options. You can show game time or you can show FPS. And ideally, I'd like to see both of them. So if there's any developers that are watching, if we could make that an option, that would be wonderful. But unfortunately, because we can't, we can only see one. We're going to have to show time. And the reason why we're showing time is because that is our benchmark. Our time is going to be able to tell us everything we need to know about the game. So let's say we're in a game. We're up against the Brits. Okay, it's 3 minutes, 54 seconds. I know that she should have sent her first card by now. So she should have a deck. That's the very first thing. So she's got a deck. Wonderful. All right. And then 357. I know that normally a Brit is going to be aging between 435 and 440. That's the normal age up time for a Brit. So I know that I've got another 40 seconds before I need to be under the town center and attacking that wagon. So the Brit's normally going to age up with the governor, and then what you're going to be doing is making sure that you're underneath that town center, hitting it with your explorer, making sure that wagon doesn't get to come down and forward on you, or it doesn't get to go over here. It's got to go somewhere that you want to make them put it, rather than where they think is optimal. So there's just absolutely so much that you can tell about game time. You can also tell the progress of your own build order. So one of the things that I often do when I'm testing a build order is I'm looking at my game time and I'm checking, all right, how fast am I able to achieve this? How fast am I able to get these out? Am I able to consistently get this out? And then that's something that I will use to measure my own abilities, my own skills, and my own builds to make sure that I can maximize the efficiency of the build. So next up is the sound options. So when it comes to sound options, ideally you want to avoid having ambient sound noise. So just for the memes, we're going to turn up our sound volume all the way to the top. Oh yeah, you hear that? And we're going to turn up our ambient sound volume. Oh yeah. You can feel it. You're in the forest right now. Oh. Did you hear that? That's what you get, mate. You bar in my ear, you get deleted. So you can keep your sound volume up, but just keep your ambient sound volumes down. All right. I like to have them, relatively low, about 5%, just so, I'm getting a little bit of ambience, but not too much to distract me. Taunts and AI cheat volume. So if you've ever experienced this in your game, I'm sorry, I'm about to blow out your ears. So turn the volume down before I quickly do it. Oh, it doesn't work. It doesn't work in skirmish. All right. I'm going to have to go into a lobby to do it, just for the memes. Nope, that's a single player lobby. That's not going to work. So you would have experienced this many times in your lobbies. You know, someone joins, it might be the last player or the second last player. You're probably, you know, whether you're alt tabbed or you're just hanging out or you're on your phone or something, and then you just hear it. So what you're going to do is you're going to turn that down. Now, you still want to hear it. You just don't want your ears to be blown out. So by doing that, it's going to enable your taunts to be a lot lower. Isn't that beautiful? And then finally, we're going to look at the music volume. So music, you can hear it in the background gently. It's keeping me company, but it's not overwhelming me. And that's the way that it should be. You don't want to have this up to max. When you're in game, you're going to be listening to every single thing that you can hear. You're going to have sound cues all the time when you're under attack, when a shipment arrives, when a villager completes, when your military units complete. You're going to hear absolutely everything, and you need to make sure that your brain is picking up everything. All right, well, that concludes this video. I'm going to be doing a follow-up video on the hotkeys, especially because hotkeys are a really important part of the game, and I think it's important that we do a video that focuses completely on that. So if you've enjoyed this video, I encourage you to leave a like. And if you think I've missed something in the video, please leave a comment down below and I'll make sure I go through the comments. And if I have missed anything, I can always release an amendment or put down a pinned comment which corrects something. So thank you all for watching.